SCHD, the Schwab US Dividend Equity ETF, is one of my largest ETF positions across my entire 7-figure portfolio. With my current 637 shares of it and buying more shares daily, this ETF long-term is not only going to pay me a significant portion of dividend income on a quarterly basis, but because of its history of raising dividends over time, I'm hoping that SCHD specifically will be able to help me pay a lot of my bills when it comes time for retirement. Now in this video specifically, we're going to talk about the Schwab US Dividend Equity ETF and explain all the ins and outs of what this ETF has to offer. Then later on towards the end of the video, we're going to go over what just a $10,000 investment into SCHD long term would turn into if an investor reinvested the dividends long term. And a quick spoiler alert, it's a lot of money, a ton of dividends, so you're definitely not going to want to miss this. So if you're a long-term dividend growth investor that's looking to invest into high-quality dividend-paying stocks and or ETFs, make sure to stick around, drop a like down below, and let's get right into this one. Real quick, for those that haven't already, make sure to go to the first link in my description and grab my new dividend investing ebook, where I share exactly how I went from $0 invested to now earning over $6,000 on a monthly basis and over $1 million invested in the market. Along with the ebook, you're also going to receive my custom dividend tracker, where you can track your dividend progress on an ongoing basis and reach your dividend investing goals. So make sure to grab yourself a copy of my dividend investing ebook and the new dividend tracker today. It's the first link in my description. Now, like I shared with you guys during the intro, and along with a lot of you guys probably already know this ETF is one of my favorite ETFs across the entire market. And this is because this ETF basically solves every single thing I personally am looking for as a long-term dividend growth investor. Now, I of course have to preface this and say there's other stocks and ETFs out there that are just as good as SCHD and might even perform better over time, and some that have performed better historically. But for me personally, as a dividend growth investor that's looking to build out a long-term portfolio that not only has the potential to keep going up in price over time, but also building a portfolio that not only is going to pay for all my bills and then some later on in my life, but on top of that, pay me more and more year over year. Because that's basically my strategy and what I'm solving for the most part, in my personal investing journey. SCHD or other dividend growth style ETFs like SCHD, DGRO, VIG, DGRW, just to name a few, all have pretty much everything I'm looking for, which is why around 7 or 8 years now into my investing career, I'm devoting a lot of my cash balance into ETFs like this personally. Now, to get back to some of the main focuses of this ETF in case you're not all that familiar with it, because believe it or not, even though this ETF has a cult-like following a lot, many will say some investors are still not aware about it. Now, this ETF has an expense ratio of 0.06%. It tracks as closely as possible the Dow Jones US Dividend 100 Index. The ETF holds around 100 different stocks at any given time, with the holding breakdowns currently, for the most part, being things like financials, healthcare, consumer defensive, industrials, and energy. Now, some of the top names in SCHD are going to be very familiar with you. Maybe some of them won't be, but for the most part, things like Home Depot, Amgen, we got BlackRock, abbvie, Texas Instruments, Cisco, UPS, Chevron, Verizon, and Lockheed Martin. Now, what's specifically special about this ETF and like other dividend growth ETFs across the market, within the holdings, there's going to be a basket of stocks for the most part that all pay dividends consistently, but also have a history of paying more and more dividends over time, which is how an ETF like SCHD, which is currently yielding around 3.5, 3.6%, has paid more and more in dividends long term. Now, just to give a quick example, around 10 years ago, this ETF was paying around a quarter per share per quarter. Now, around 10 years later, we're talking 82 cents, 61 cents, and 74 cents over the last 3 quarters. So that means that investors that bought into this ETF around a decade ago are not only up substantially as far as ETF price return, but on top of that, they're getting paid a ton more of cash flow consistently quarterly, which again, for my specific investing strategy, for the things I'm solving for, is very important because like I said, I'm looking to use dividends to pay for my bills, vacations, etc. later on in my life. Now, because SCHD has a history of moving up in price, at least it has historically, pays a nice solid dividend yield of around 3.5, 3.6% as of right now, and has paid more and more in dividends over time to the tune of around 10% more year over year during a lot of different time frames. This ETF could be a perfect ETF, especially for those investors out there that don't necessarily have all that much money to start with. And like you see in the title of this video, we're going to go through and I'm going to show you exactly what just a $10,000 investment into the Schwab US Dividend Equity ETF could turn into for investors long term. So let's jump right into that. Now, over here at the dividend calculator, keep in mind these numbers are all just estimations. These numbers can change in the future, but just to give all of you guys an idea of what just a $10,000 investment into SCHD could turn into in the future. A $10,000 starting principal, $1 of annual contribution ongoingly after that, 3.6% annual dividend yield initially, 10% expected annual dividend amount increase, again, could be higher or lower, 3% annual price appreciation, 30 years invested, dividends are paid quarterly, DRIP is going to be turned on, so all the dividends along the way are going to be reinvested. Let's see what just a $10,000 investment into SCHD could turn into in the future. So year number one, the $10,000 principal invested into SCHD would earn an investor around 3.6% or around $364 per year in dividends. After those dividends are reinvested and after those dividend increases, because again, SCHD historically has paid more and more dividends over time, but year number two, we're already to $10,611 and $413 per year in dividends. Now 10 years down the road, $18,500 with over $100 per month on average in dividend income already. Now, as you're going to see as the years go on, the dividends are going to compound and everything's just going to get bigger faster and faster, which is why I always urge, especially newer investors, to invest as much as they can into high quality assets as soon as possible and let the power of compounding and let the snowball do its thing. So 20 years down the road, the $10,000 investment is up to $51,000, $52,000 with almost $7,000 per year in dividends. 25 years down the road, the investment has 10x'd at $108,000, $109,000 with over $20,000 per year in dividends. By 30 years down the road, that $10,000 investment would now be worth somewhere around $285,000 in theory and earning this investor around $75,000 per year in dividends, which gives a grand total of $357,000 as a new balance after 30 years invested. Now, the crazy thing about this is just a $10,000 investment with an annual contribution on top of that of $1. Of course, if you added more to the annual contribution, these numbers would get much larger, much quicker. But just with a $1 contribution, the fact that a $10,000 investment could potentially turn into something like $357,000 after just 30 years is honestly outstanding and just shows the power of high quality dividend growth ETFs like this one. Now, for me personally, as of right now, SCHD is of course a large portion of my overall portfolio, but not everything. And that's because as a 31-year-old dividend growth investor, I'm looking to use my portfolio, at least a portion of my portfolio's dividends within the next, say, 2, 5, 10 years to possibly use the dividends to live off. And although investing into something like SCHD, making it a core position for your overall portfolio is not a bad idea whatsoever in my humble opinion, I also invest in different higher yielding options because, like I said, I want to use my dividends a lot sooner than some other investors. So now that we talked about SCHD, the Schwab US Dividend Equity ETF, I shared with you some of the reasons on why I've been buying this ETF like crazy over the last few years, and we saw exactly what just a $10,000 investment could turn into long-term for investors that stay the course. I lastly want to hear from you guys down below. I'm genuinely curious. Do you currently own any shares of the Schwab US Dividend Equity ETF? And if you do, how many shares do you have as of right now? Drop it in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to please drop a like and subscribe for more future content like this. Thanks as always for stopping by, and if you are interested in investing, make sure to check out these recent videos I posted right here.